Hello, LPTexas delegates and alternates. Welcome to our training this evening. We're probably going to give it another minute or so for folks to join. But just real quickly, I wanted to do a quick round of introductions for my esteemed co-hosts. We have on the line with us tonight, Joe Burns, Nathan Watts, and Darren Pollock. So I will be going through the training tonight. The guys are going to be kind of monitoring for your questions in the comments and try to get you some real-time answers. But we will pause to, give some time for answers, and especially want to cover some of those really good questions that other people might benefit from as well. So we will pause periodically throughout the training to allow time for questions. And how's it looking out there, guys? We seeing people join?
As of right now, I can't tell super obviously, so it doesn't look like many joining quite yet.
Yeah.
I do see we have about a dozen on YouTube.
Excellent.
And I think there are some people starting to file in the Facebook as well. I'm looking to share our Facebook stream to some of our various pages as well to help get the word out, let people know that we are starting.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Oh, Sergio says hello. Hi, Sergio. All right.
Seeing a good 15 to 20 viewers on Facebook right now at the moment. So
Great.
just lurking.
Good deal. Yep. I see Patrick. I see Ryan. I see Jeremy. All right. Well, then, hey, let's go ahead and rock and roll, guys.
Awesome.
All right. So for our agenda today, really, we kind of did our welcome and introduction. So this is a part of our credentials committee. You've got the full list of the credentials committee members here in the box on the screen. So Nathan Watts, Christy Ford, myself, Jesse Cowart. Also on the credentials committee is Doug Crawl, Bo Zimmerman, and of course, Darren and Joe, who are both on the line with me this evening. If you have any questions at all regarding the credentialing for the state convention, you can reach all of us at credentials@lptexas.org. So we will start with just kind of an overview of the state convention, and then we're going to go into an order of business. We will talk about the delegation leader procedures and responsibilities, and then what are the roles of the delegates and alternates as well. We'll talk real high level around clarifications and disputes, and then we have an appendix where basically we're just going to cover all of the kind of helpful resources, including our 2022 convention website where you can find some more information as well. So with that, guys, I am going to jump right in. So, of course, the state convention, this is where all the magic happens, right? This is where the elected delegates and alternates from our county conventions are all going to get together to conduct the business of the state party. So, anyone is welcome to come and observe the business session. So if you aren't a delegate or an alternate, you are willing to or are able to just kind of sit in the gallery and observe the proceedings, but only seated delegates can actively participate and vote. So that state convention, as you all probably know, is going to be taking place this weekend. So we will have event starting on Friday night. The actual formal business agenda won't start until Saturday, but we do encourage those who can come Friday night to come for the gubernatorial forum, the Leaving the Duopoly with Joe Walsh and Spike Cohen. So a lot of good events happening throughout the weekend, in addition to the business itself. Also, we do recommend that if you are going to arrive for those events on Friday morning, the Credentials Committee is going to have a booth set up on Friday afternoon so that you can come through and actually go through credentialing on Friday. That way you don't have to worry about that on Saturday morning. So that is an option to you. We will be there. All right. And then we have our little legal disclaimer that this is not legal advice, but we do very, very hard work to make sure that everything that we present to you is in sync with the Texas election code. It is. All right. So order of business. The order of business is actually driven by our LPTexas bylaws. So if you actually pull up our bylaws and go to the convention section, you'll see that the order of business that I've got laid out on these slides is actually the order of business that is dictated by our bylaws. As of right now, I've kind of gotten it broken out into a Saturday, Sunday. The agenda for the business session isn't 100%. But as of right now, the draft, the working draft, this is how I've kind of broken it out between the Saturday and the Sunday events. Of course, all of this is subject to the whims of you, the delegation. So some things may, that we had intended to get done on Saturday, maybe get pushed to Sunday. If we're running ahead of schedule, maybe we can pull some of those Sunday things into Saturday. We'll see how it goes. But this is just kind of a tentative order of business. So I don't want anybody to kind of think everything's set in stone here. Really what we do is, of course, we have a call to order by our state chair. And then we are going to have a report on the temporary role. We'll introduce the temporary officers of the convention. And then we will actually, the gavel will be turned over to the temporary chair. If there's any kind of opening ceremonies, we would go through that. And then the first report that we're actually going to have at the convention is going to be the report of the Credentials Committee. And so that is going to be the report to establish the permanent role. Credentials Committee is also, responsible for kind of determining what is quorum, right? So we will have the report of the Credentials Committee, and then we're going to then go directly into the nomination and election of the permanent officers of the convention officers, right? So if there's, chair, secretary, and then, I believe we have a parliamentarian that's coming in that has been voted on by SLEC already. And at that point, the permanent chair of the convention is going to take the chair. Then what will happen is we will have the report from the Rules Committee. If you have not already, and I'll show you this at the end of the session, but if you go out to the LPTexas.org website, under the heading of 2022 conventions, you will see a menu item called reports. The Credentials Committee report, the Rules Committee report, and the Platform Committee reports are all already out there. So if you have not had a chance to review the Rules or Platform Committee reports or Credentials Committee reports, I recommend you do that in advance. That way you can kind of get a feel for, what, planks are they talking about, combining, or which planks might be ready to sunset. And we're not recommending that we, kind of restart those. Rules, of course, there's a lot of, bylaws recommendations that are going in. So highly recommended that you take the time prior to convention to review those, get your questions, get your thoughts in order. That way you're prepared to speak to those at convention if you have any questions or concerns. So we'll come back to that, but from the report on the Rules Committee, we'll then go into the nomination for candidates for public office. And of course, that's going to be our statewide office election. So, our governor, lieutenant governor, et cetera, attorney general, all of those statewide offices will be open for nomination. And you can, of course, vote yes, no, NODA, always an option. So we will go into the candidates for public office. Following the candidates for public office, we'll actually go into the nomination and election for the state party officers. So actually the permanent state party officers that will be our officers 2022 to 2024, right? So not to be confused with the convention officers. And I know that gets a little bit squirrely sometimes, but who's going to be our chair, our vice chair, our treasurer, our secretary for the next 2 years? We'll go into those nominations and elections. At that point, the permanent convention chair is going to announce to the delegates the place of each of the regional caucuses. And we're basically going to have a brief recess for those caucuses. And that is where everybody's going to gather by their Senate district. And you will caucus together to elect your SLEC representatives for the next 2-year term. So each Senate district is allotted 2 SLEC representatives. And so you will basically go to, for example, I'm SD4. So me and everyone else that lives within SD4 will get together and we will caucus, and we will nominate and elect who our 2 SLEC representatives for SD4 are going to be for the next 2 years. Quick plug on that as well. If you are interested in being a SELECT representative and you have not already filled out the SELECT application, if you go to the lptexas.org website under Get Involved, you'll find that SELECT application, and you'll also be asked to complete an LP Texas platform, I agree with the with the platform. There's a space where if you disagree or take issue with any area of the platform, you have an area to indicate that. But that also needs to be signed and returned to the secretary in records. All right. So the regional caucuses, they're meeting, they're electing their district representatives. Then the chair is going to call the convention back to order following all of those regional caucuses. Those regional caucuses are going to report on who the new select district representatives are going to be. And then, of course, each district caucus will need to submit minutes and provide contact information for the elected select representatives. So that gets us through Saturday. And that is right now where the proposed break is in the business between Saturday and Sunday. Again, that's subject to change. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know, how many, questions or concerns or things like that are maybe going to come out of some of the, the reports or anything like that. But as of right now, that's the goal. All right. So let's go into Sunday. So whenever we reconvene on Sunday, then we're going to get into the nomination and election of the delegates and alternates to the National Convention. National Convention is in Reno this year. That is actually Memorial Day weekend. So we have 74 delegate and 74 alternate seats for 2022. For the National Convention this year. So we will then go into the process of nominations and elections for those individuals. Following that, we'll have the report of the platform committee. And then this isn't going to be applicable for this particular year, but presidential elector candidates, that I left it in just because it's in the rules, but we're not nominating anybody for president this go round. And then if there's any other business, we would have that kind of be towards the tail end of that session, accepted speeches by anybody who wanted to do accepted speeches for those who were nominated for a public office. And then we adjourn. I do believe on Sunday, and this is just for you folks who are interested in being on Slack, I believe that historically we have had like a brief like select training session on Sunday. Again, I haven't seen that final agenda, but all that to say is that if you are interested in being on Slack, and especially if you might be new to Slack, you might want to stick around for sure for Sunday in case we have that training session. So
just a quick comment on that, Jesse. Actually, what happens is after the state convention adjourns, there's it's a real meeting of Select. It's the
okay, so
first
it's after
business meeting of
adjournment.
Select. Now, very little happens at that first meeting, but
Right.
it is an actual meeting of Select that's called. So really, people who are seeking to be a Select member are strongly urged to stick around and be
Right.
available for that first very important.
Yeah,
But
if I'm not
relatively very
mistaken,
quick meeting.
I think that first meeting is
Mhm.
mandatory, and it depends on what's going on. The last one we had was very, very short. The one in 2018 was a little long because we
Yeah.
had a lawsuit going on that needed to be discussed. But yeah, it just depends. I mean, the select body, the new body, will set the agenda for that meeting, so it's
Yeah.
going to be short or as long as the body chooses it to be. But
Yeah.
it's definitely going to happen.
I think that I think it's not mandatory as far as like if you don't show up you're off Select immediately,
No,
but
no.
but missing it would probably count against the one of two consecutive meetings that you could on your second consecutive missed meeting, you are off of Select is the current bylaws. So it would, if you miss it, it would count toward that for one thing. And I think that there's even a bylaws proposal we'll be considering at state convention this year that would go ahead and set what the agenda for that first meeting of Select is. So there are things like that to look at and be aware of. Of course, that's mostly just applicable to those who are looking to serve on select, but do be aware of that. It is quite important for as many new select members as possible to attend that. And if you miss it, I'm certain there are things that take place there that you'll have to follow up with within the following days.
Gotcha. So looking at some of the questions in the chat, I'm just going to cherry pick a couple of them here. So Amanda asked, when will the select application spreadsheet be finished and can we see all applicants? That's not necessarily under the purview of the credentials committee. Amanda, I believe that probably the best way to get an answer to that question, I would reach out to our current secretary, Stephanie Berlin, and ask her what the game plan is for that. I know that she has been monitoring all of the applications, providing feedback to anyone who, maybe forgot to sign here or, do the platform form signature or anything like that. But I believe that they're closing everything at a certain point, but I would reach out to her just to validate where we can see a list of all of those applicants. And then, of course, what you can do is if you are interested in being on Select and you've already filled out the application, signed the form and everything, you can always, if you're in Discord, go into the Discord channel for your Senate district and just let people know, hey, just letting you guys know I've thrown my name in the hat. If anybody has any questions for me or wants to to talk to me about my history or my stance on X platform or anything like that, feel free to go into your Discord Senate District channel and kind of announce that you've thrown your name in the hat. Steve asked, will each regional caucus elect a chair and a secretary? No, we don't typically go through the, doing like a chair and a secretary.
I mean, they'll elect a caucus chair and caucus secretary. Yeah. They'll choose who's going to facilitate that caucus and who's going to take notes, because you do have to take notes.
You do have to take notes.
But beyond that, no one continues to serve as a leader of that district except for the elected select representatives themselves.
Yes, and I'm sure Arthur will appreciate the plug, but when we do these caucuses, we need to ensure that we take minutes and that we turn those in so that they can be recorded, because that is definitely a requirement.
Yep. Good deal. Another question that I see, Bethany asked, do you have to be select to attend the meeting? So Bethany, I'm thinking maybe you were talking about the training session that follows the business on Sunday. I do believe you would need to be.
No, it's a select business meeting. It must be public.
Yeah, it must be public. I just didn't know if it was because it was a training. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just maybe a bit less relevant, but but all meetings select are public.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. And then let's see what else. What other questions do we have out there? Have I missed any?
Well, I did see there were some questions earlier from you may have addressed it a little bit, but Judith asked earlier, talking about the different events that are going on in convention. She asked if can any of those separate events be purchased a la carte, such as Friday night's gubernatorial forum and Saturday morning's breakfast. I quickly checked on Discord with our events department, and I heard from Becca, who actually confirmed that on Friday night there is a 6 to 7 p.m. happy hour that's only for package holders. However, at 7 p.m., the doors are open to everybody for the gubernatorial forum and the leaving the duopoly conversation with Spike Cohen. And there's a cash bar that will be open all night. So hopefully that addresses some of the question there. Some of the other events like the meals and things like that, I think that's only I believe that's only provided as a package, but you could reach out to our events department. I believe events@lptex.org, possibly beforehand, or I bet you could even find them at convention and maybe ask if maybe for an appropriately sized donation you can make it into the lunch or something like that. But I think a lot of those, of course, they have to arrange ahead of time to know how many people are showing up. So I would recommend to reach out to them to ask about those. But I think that those separate things may only be part of the packages.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well, as like the lunch, the gala, and those things like that are part of the packages. So I don't know that there's a la carte options there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to move forward, or to see if there are a couple other questions
No,
we want
there's
to answer?
there's a lot of questions, and I want to make sure that we
Great.
try to answer them. So I think I see Billy asking, "Am I right that anyone can still be nominated from the floor of the caucus?" And Billy, we're talking about
Probably the district caucus.
The district caucus, right? Yeah, for the select representatives. Yeah. So yeah, I think that we should have an application on file for everyone, but yeah, I think that you can still technically nominate somebody from the floor in the caucus. It's just we're asking that everybody fill out the form. That way, it just kind of makes the business move smoothly if we already have those forms filled out and everything for everyone, and don't have to try to do that after the fact. But yes, I think you can.
I think I could be wrong on this. I think it's possible that if someone in a district caucus is nominated and even elected to fill a select position without having filled out the application prior, they would have to submit that application before their election is recognized. But I know that but I could be wrong about that too, because in that it might be that they had to have filled out the application before the caucus convenes, because I know the whole purpose of that bylaw that was adopted at last convention was to give people voting in the caucus the opportunity to review the qualifications of
Right.
the people being nominated.
Yeah,
So
so that people could know in advance and reach out to
yeah,
those people if they wanted to.
yeah. So possibly a careful reading of the bylaws would be in order to answer that question. Potentially things are ultimately left up to the people casting the votes, but it's if things are done wrong, it's possible someone elected may not be recognized as elected. So I do
Exactly.
recommend caution on that, and reaching out to probably really the best place to ask that is at convention before we convene to caucus. If it's asked and publicly answered, that would probably be the best place to get
Yeah.
something like a ruling on it for the sake of everybody.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
I'm sure it will come up. I don't think that's something Whitney would leave unaddressed, since it might cause delays if the processes aren't followed.
Yeah. And a quick note about some of the questions that I'm seeing in the chat, guys, is if you have questions that really aren't, specific to the credentialing and the actual business that's happening, while we're trying to plug some of those things, the events department is going to have the answers to those questions, like about the packages. Can I buy something a la carte? Is it wheelchair accessible and everything? We on the credentials committee, unfortunately, aren't going to be privy to that information. So just understand that, if we tell you, hey, can you send an email to ask that question to events@lptexas.org, that's not us trying to pass the buckets. That it's really not something that we've been a part of in those discussions. And we just have to point you in the right direction. All right. Any other questions that we want to make sure that we address, guys, before we move on?
I think we're good. The only other little thing I saw was earlier a comment from Patrick Mitchell, just asking if there's going to be enough time on Saturday to cover all those things that are on the order of business. Because of course the rules committee, for example, the rules committee's bylaws proposals are pretty long, and I'd say, it's possible Saturday is the day that we have the full day, so we take more time on Saturday than we do on Sunday. But if we, yeah, it's what the convention body decides to do, how much time we decide to take on each topic, and if we extend, if we finish early, and any business we don't finish on Saturday will just be the next order of business on Sunday typically.
Yeah. Yep. That's the best way that we can answer that question, guys. I mean, it's, again, We can hope that we can get through all of that on Saturday, but if some of it does end up having to bleed into Sunday just because there's, discussions that run long on rules, like you said, Patrick, for example, I mean, it is what it is, right? So this is tentative. So I want to make sure that I emphasize that again. This order of business, the breakout between Saturday and Sunday, is tentative. We can't say for sure that these things are going to happen on these days. So do plan to be there Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, and just to add to that, our bylaws kind of designate what we're supposed to put into the agenda, but then Whitney herself will create the agenda to submit to the body to approve, and the body has to vote to approve that agenda that we're going to follow. And then, of course, there's leeway even beyond that. We can pretty much do what we want as a body. I mean, we could gavel in and 10 minutes later adjourn. I mean, not that would ever happen, but we have that power. And a lot of people think that we're following these arbitrary rules that we have to follow, but it's really within our control.
Yeah, gotcha.
We've got one question that someone's wanting to ask on YouTube. They're asking what the suggested attire is. Let's see if I can find there. And it was a two-part question, but the number one thing that he was asking was what did we suggest the attire to be?
Yeah, for the business meeting, I mean, the business meeting is, come as you are. If anybody who's been involved with LPTexas for any amount of time knows, like, we have the gamut of fashion for things. So for the business meeting, so like me, I'm probably going to be business casual, but that's me, right? You'll
see a little bit of everything. I mean, I would prefer business casual, but yeah, you'll see a little bit of everything. And the second part of that question was, can we bring a backpack? You'll see people bringing all kinds of stuff, laptops, what you need to get through the business. So I wouldn't think a backpack would be out of the question.
Yeah, I'm going to have my laptop bag. So my backpack, I'm 100% going to have that.
Yep, great.
But another question just came in asking, how are all of the votes taken? By voice, hands, paper? The answer to that is all of the above, depending upon the situation. Mm-hmm. Some types of voting are mandated by our rules. And then other types, we get to choose. The chair may suggest a particular type of voting for a particular situation. And as long as the body doesn't object, then that's the way we do it. So it will be situational. I'm certain that under certain circumstances that someone will move to even use a different method of voting, like approval voting, instead of first past the post in certain situations. So,
got it. Thanks, Joe. All right, guys. We'll pause again in a little bit for questions. I do want to go ahead and move on, but for those of you who have questions out there, hold on. We'll get right back to you. All right, so let's talk about the delegation leader process and responsibilities. So each county is going to be its own delegation, right? So the delegation leader, which is usually the county chair, but let's say the county chair isn't able to make it, they need to designate someone else. There's somebody who is in charge from a county perspective. So for example, I will be the delegation leader for Montgomery County, but I'm probably going to designate a co-delegation leader because I'm going to be splitting time between my delegation and the credentials table, for example, right? But the delegation leader will be chosen by their county before business starts. Again, it's usually the county chair, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. And then, before the business convenes, basically what the credentials committee is going to do is they're going to call for all of the delegation leaders to come collect the voter buttons. So myself and Christy Ford spent Saturday afternoon making sure that we had voter buttons in the right numbers for every single county and putting them in their own individual bags and making sure that we've got everything all good to go with your voter buttons. So we'll call the delegation leaders representing each county to come collect the voter buttons for their delegations, and they'll be responsible for giving the voter buttons to the delegates, but also they'll be in charge of seating alternates in the delegation's voting area anytime there's a vacancy in the delegation. So for example, let's say somebody gets an urgent phone call from home, right? They've got to step away from the voting area. They give their voter button to the delegation leader, and then the delegation leader will then go and give that that voter button to, let's say, alternate number 1, or whoever's next in line with the alternates, and then have that alternate put that voter button on, and then have that alternate join the rest of the delegation in the voting area. The delegation leader is going to need to be responsible for collecting the voter buttons at the close of business each day. So, or if somebody's like permanently leaving the convention. So let's say, said person steps away from the convention to take that emergency phone call, and they come back and they say, hey guys, I've got to book it back home. I've got a family emergency or something. They're responsible for making sure they've got that voter button and they've given it to someone else, and that they collect it from all of the delegations at the end of the day. We're not recommending that you take the voter buttons like whenever we break for lunch or the district caucuses necessarily, but definitely at the close of business each day. So whenever we get through everything and we adjourn for the day on Saturday, delegation leader collect the voter buttons from everybody. And then before business starts again on Sunday, hand it back out. When business ends on Sunday, collecting those voter buttons, making sure that all those voter buttons get back to the credentials committee. So basically, you're responsible for making sure that the proper number of seats in your county's delegation area are occupied. And then that only those individuals with the voter buttons are actually seated in the voting area. So seated delegates will sit in the voting area. There will be kind of a gallery for the alternates for when they are not seated. And then you'll just maintain a count of the delegates that are present in the delegation. And then again, transferring those voter buttons to alternates to fill the vacancies, and then, making sure everything gets back to the credentials committee. All right. That is the delegation leader procedures and responsibilities. So again, get with your delegation of your counties and decide who that delegation leader is going to be. All right. So let's talk about the procedures and responsibilities for you as delegates or alternates. So delegates. So a credential delegate is someone, they've had their credentials verified by the credentials committee, which again, you can see that in our report, everybody who's been credentialed or anyone who is pending. And then you have received your name badge by checking in at the credentials table. And so you're considered properly credentialed if you have registered to vote in the county. You have completed the oath of affiliation at precinct or county convention or since then. And then your name appears on the delegate list in the convention minutes that were submitted to LPTexas from your county convention. So that is how we have gone through and credentialed everyone. And again, you can find all of that information in the credentials report. And then it's going to be the responsibility of the delegate to make sure that you've got your voter button. And then if you need to step away, you declare your seat vacant in the voting area. You give that voter button to your delegation leader so that they can then give that to an alternate to take your seat while you're away. And then you would just need to, whenever you return, hey, I'm back, reacquire that voter button whenever you return to the voting area, and then the alternate would then return to the gallery area. So that is you as a delegate. Let's talk about alternates. Alternates. That is going to be someone who's eligible to vote on the convention floor in the event that the delegation is not at full capacity. So someone has had to step away, or somebody, couldn't make it. And so you've been kind of, pushed up from alternate to delegate. You do need to check in with the credentials committee, even if you're an alternate. Even the alternates are going to have their name, have name badges. You may not have voter buttons unless there's actually a vacancy in your delegation, but everybody is going to, as an alternate, will be credentialed and have your own name badge. Again, you are only seated on the voting floor whenever your delegation falls below full capacity, and the delegation leader provides you with a voter button. And then again, when that vacantly no longer exists, delegate steps away, they come back, you do have to relinquish that voter button to the delegation leader so that original delegate can regain their voting status. So that is alternates. So in other words, if you're an alternate, unless you're actually seated in the voting area with a voter button, you're not able to vote at that time. If a vacancy opens and you're given a voter button, you can vote so long as you're seated in the voting area. All right. So that is the alternate procedures. I want to pause again for questions. What do we got out there, guys?
I think you're muted right now, Joe. If you're trying to read one.
I wasn't, but I'm trying to quickly get back
Cool.
to
Well,
a different
yeah,
one.
I took note of a few as they came in. So I saw one from Kenneth earlier asking about the national delegates, asking what is the process for the election of the 74 delegates that we have to national. So how do nominations work? Is it like individual or by county, region, and voting and things like that? Any comment on that?
Joe, you want to take that one?
You know, that process is debatable. How we go about that is up to us as a body to an extent. I'd have to look back at the bylaws because I remember there was some discussion about mandating that within the bylaws because I think some people were upset that we did a huge election by slate, and I know that our bylaws have some language in it about how we go about electing slated delegates. But when we get to that process, I'm certain that we'll have it lined out and ready to go. And if it is something that we have options on, we will know about that at the time as we come into that.
Yeah, I was quickly trying to review the bylaws on this to see what I said, what we had on it. LPTexas bylaw 4D9 is titled "Election of Delegates to National Conventions," but as I'm looking at it right now, it's really doesn't say much, if anything, about how we actually choose the delegates, except for the cases when which happened in 2020. The national convention was held before our state convention, so it was actually the body of select that decided the delegates, our national delegates, and that process is decided here. But as far as the normal process of it being done at state convention, our bylaw seems to be surprisingly silent on that, and I don't even see a proposal like in the upcoming bylaws, report to do that. So my recollection is that this is a question that we have to answer every time a convention, and actually it can sometimes cause trouble if we don't put some thought into it ahead of time. So before we come to that point on what's probably Sunday, it would be good for some people to get together and figure out the good wording of a nice clean motion to decide, make clear how we actually will carry out the election nominations and elections of national delegates at convention.
And keep in mind, I mean, the way our bylaws are structured, the bylaws are changeable throughout by the body. The bylaws are what we create them to be. So even if, let's say, the bylaw designated that we do it a certain way, if we didn't want to do it that way, we could vote to change the bylaw and then do it the way we want to do it. So this is our document, our party, and this is what we are designated as the rules, unless a future body changes them.
Yeah, and just a real quick comment on that, Joe, is that I do believe that like perhaps there is a way to do it, and there may be a pretty high threshold for like ignoring or changing what a process if it's clearly stated in the bylaws, because the bylaws are kind of supposed to operate like our constitution, and we're not we shouldn't be able to like ignore it just at a whim. I know that people it's often the Roberts rule, motion to suspend the rules, is often abused or misunderstood, thinking that it's a way to ignore our state rules or bylaws, but it's not. A motion to suspend rules is just dealing with Robert's rules of order. So I think you're right that there is a way to do it if we want to, but I think it's like there's a minority of cases, or it might be really high thresholds. So just managing expectations on that there. Generally speaking, if there's a process clearly set in the bylaws, that's how we have to do it unless we officially amend the bylaws.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Good discussion. I see Ryan asking if these slides will be made public, and yes, they will. So they're not there yet, but if you go under lptexas.org, 2022 conventions, there's going to be a training and forms link. This deck will be made available under that training link. So the same place where we had our prior training. It's just not posted there yet, but it will be posted there within the next day or so. And is also on our LPTexas YouTube channel, a recording of this training will be posted for those who couldn't make it or just want to, run through this training again. All right.
There was a question about the credentials report itself, our credentials committee report
yes.
that lists the delegates. So Patrick Mitchell was asking in regards to that credentials report, what's the process for adopting or amending it?
We did have a meeting on March 30th, a public meeting of the Credentials Committee to go over that. Did we have anything that came? I actually didn't make that particular meeting.
There were a few small changes, and we can even now we can receive feedback and we can consider it as a committee. Although really we've already printed badges and stuff, so like at this point it's hard to make additional changes to what we are planning to present to the body. But otherwise, like once the credentials report is delivered officially to the state convention, it can be adopted as is, just with, I believe it's just a majority, vote by the convention body, or people can come up and make motions to amend the report. So the report itself is almost, the whole report is like a motion, and that report, that motion there can be motions to amend it. Our hope and anticipation is that there won't be any need to. I don't think that we're going to have anything controversial this time. Like we did have a couple questions last cycle, but that's how it would be handled if people want to object or discuss or amend the report.
Yeah. Good deal. And then I saw a question about where is the credential report available at. So that is on lptexas.org under 2022 conventions. And then under that, one of the menu items under that heading is reports. So you'll find all of the committee reports are under their platform, rules, and credentials.
I'm dropping a link in the Facebook comments now. It appears that YouTube is blocking us from dropping links.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Don't worry. I'm going to show it here in a moment at the end of the call when we kind of get to the end.
One more question before we move on. Billy Pierce asked earlier if the seating of the delegates is assigned by county, and if so, just how that's all arranged.
Yes. So all delegations do need to be seated by county. So Harris County needs to sit together. Midland County needs to sit together. Matagorda County needs to sit together, et cetera. So that is actually in our bylaws that every delegation are seated together. As far as alternates that aren't seated in the voting area, I don't think it's explicitly stated in the bylaws that they have to sit together, but it's probably not a bad idea. That way the delegation leader knows generally where their alternates are seating. That way, if there is a vacancy on the voting floor, they can very quickly go and locate their alternates and don't have to look around the gallery to try to find alternate number one or everything. So I would recommend alternates all seating together as well. That way it's just easier for the delegation leader to find you. Amanda, we can't sit with our friends. Boo. Sorry. There's a good reason for it, though.
You can't sit with your friends and vote. You could always leave your seat, vacate your seat, let an alternate sit in, and go sit with your non-voting friends.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Right. All right. Good questions. Any other questions that we saw, guys, before I move in to the next section here?
I think we're pretty well caught up.
Okay, cool. All right. Trying real hard to keep this to an hour, guys, because I know we all have busy lives. All right. So clarifications and disputes. All right. So basically what the credentials committee is doing is we are verifying the credentials of the delegates and alternates. We are verifying and reporting the present delegate and alternate counts upon request to the convention body, and we are keeping track of quorum to report to the convention body when requested. What we're not doing is, or we don't have the authority to remove any properly credentialed delegate. So if somebody's been credentialed and somebody comes up to us and says, no, this person needs to go, there's some kind of squirrely thing with their voter registration or something, like, we've already validated that they're already credentialed. We're not trying to remove anybody from the floor. And then we're also not handling any disputes among delegates and alternates. So delegation leaders, that's your bag, right? So if there is a dispute between, let's say delegate leaves the floor, alternate gets the voter button, and alternate doesn't want to give it back up whenever the delegate, returns. Credentials committee is not handling that dispute. Delegation leaders handling that dispute. Alternate should be expected to give that button up and give it back to the original delegate. If there is an issue that arises within your delegation, the delegation leader should report anything that they can't handle to the convention chair. That way it can be addressed by the convention body. And that is how we will handle clarifications and disputes. All right. Appendix. So I have mentioned several times through this presentation that we have a convention website. You can actually link to it for a couple of different ways. You can go directly to convention.lptexas.org, or like I said, and I'm just going to pull this over onto my screen. If you're on the LP Texas website, there is a section called 2022 Conventions.
And right now, Jesse, if you're trying to show the browser, I think maybe it's just showing the slide still.
No, hold on.
Probably just, it was a shared application thing instead of shared screen.
There we go.
There we go. And now
give me a second.
We're getting there.
We're getting there. Sorry, guys. Technology. How about now?
Actually, no. Still, it's probably just that single tab that's been shared instead of the
Here, we can work smarter, not harder. Let's see.
Yes, now we're going.
Now
we're getting there.
All right.
Looking good. Looking good.
Okay. I think I had two different Chrome browsers open. Okay.
Yeah.
So okay. 2022 conventions. If you want to see the reports, for example, the reports are going to be listed here under that heading reports. So you'll see, and I know this probably doesn't show super big on your screens right now, so bear with me, but we've got our credentials report, we've got the rules report, we've got the platform report. So again, take the time to review these, jot down your thoughts in advance of the convention. So, if there's anything that's being proposed from a bylaws or a platform perspective, for example, jot that down, be ready to speak to it and everything. But it's going to be difficult for you to try to review those reports in real time. And plus the platform committee and the rules committee and the credentials committee, there's been a lot of time and a lot of thought, a lot of manpower, a lot of hours put into these reports. So taking the time to review those in advance of convention is going to be the move. So you can view those reports there. Again, and this is just kind of a plug on the training again. So the training, this presentation that we've been doing today will be posted under the training materials. So we'll have this right here where it has files. This training will be posted. And then, of course, it will also, the recording will be available on YouTube, but the slides themselves will be posted here within the next day or so. So we talked about reports. We talked about training. There is an officer interest form out there. So if anybody is interested in running for chair or vice chair, secretary, treasurer, and hasn't already put in that form, encourage you to do that. The national sign up form is out there as well. So if anybody is interested in being a delegate to national, you can fill out that form in advance. That way, people know who you are and know you're interested and can reach out to you and talk to you if they have questions about, who you are and where you stand.
And Kyle Russell reminded us that form, the national delegate sign up closes at 8 p.m. tonight, which is in like 9 minutes. I think maybe it's possible to submit it later, but it's not going to be. That's the cutoff for what the secretary is going to collect and organize and I think make available to people. So
Right.
if you want to do that,
Not
now's
to say that others
the time.
be nominated,
Sorry for those who are watching the recording, but everybody live, if you haven't done it and you want to, do it right now.
I can tell you from historical experience that if you want to be a delegate to national, it ups your chances a great deal if you get on that form.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good deal. And then there's some other things too. So there is a schedule out there. So this isn't like the business meeting schedule that we've talked about today, like the actual order of business, but just a general idea of like, kind of registration will be open on Friday. Also credentialing will be open on Friday. There's a cocktail hour. So some of the things that are happening kind of outside of the actual business section that we've been talking through today, like the business will convene on Saturday at 9 a.m., but registration will be open as early as 7 a.m. And then we'll break. We have, business meeting reconvenes at 1:30 after lunch. And then again, Sunday registration will be open again early for those who haven't registered. And then business meeting will reconvene starting at 9 a.m. again. So that's kind of the high level agenda. And then again, that's the select orientation meeting that we were talking about here, actually on that schedule. So that is the game plan there. And then tickets, I believe, are still available for, don't get me lying. Not much longer.
Actually, Becca just posted on our Discord, and she's saying that the last day to get a convention package is tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Okay. Thank you, Joe, for that.
Well, she posted that yesterday at 5:30. So
yeah,
sorry.
So
today.
Tomorrow, Tuesday, April 5th. For those.
So we're trying to get everything finalized and shut down. Okay. Good deal. All right. So convention packages are all there, and then there's details for accommodations and things like that too. So a lot of good information out here on that convention site. But I think, as far as what we're talking about today, the reports is probably the big thing that you'll definitely want to look at. But then you can always refer back to this training session once we get that posted out here under training and forms. All right. Back to the slideshow.
Yeah, let me make a correction. The ticket sales do end today, the 4th. I was reading the announcement that was posted yesterday.
Thank you.
If you want to purchase a ticket package, you must do so by tonight, April the 4th, for our live viewers. Now, I've seen in the past, if there may be some availability, but there is no guarantee if you don't meet the deadline, right? So still might, but you're taking your chances there if you don't really lock it down.
Gotcha. And just to say it, guys, I think it's worth mentioning that to be a delegate at the state convention, you don't necessarily have to purchase a ticket, right? So if you don't have any interest in, attending the lunch or attending the gala or things like that, like you can just show up for the business meeting and do your job as a delegate and go home. So I do want to make sure that I mention that. But if you are interested in any of those kind of like extra, ancillary events, then buying a package is going to be the way to go.
Or if you can't make it to those, but you want to support the funding of the convention, because it's fully paid out of our pocket. So buy a package anyway.
Good point. Good point. All right. So those are the resources that are available to you. Lots of good information out there on the site. The last thing that I wanted to go over tonight is Robert's Rules. Here's my ask, guys. We have a lot of people in this party who have been around for a while, and they know Robert's Rules backwards and forwards. And then we've got some new blood that are coming into the party, and they are kind of newbies as far as Robert's Rules go. Let's be kind to one another. So if you're a newbie, feel free to, reach out to the seasoned pro next to you and say, how do I go about doing this? Seasoned pro, if somebody, gets, point of order or point of inquiry mixed up or something like that, let's not be a jerk about it, right? Let's help each other out. Not everybody is super familiar with it. That being said, for the newbies, if you are not familiar with Robert's Rules, it will be a good thing for you to at least get somewhat familiar with it going into convention. We do have a user-friendly table that we link to in this deck that'll be published under that training section here within the next day or two. But I did put some basic definitions in here, making a motion. So if you're making a formal proposal to bring a subject before the assembly, to the body, so, you're saying, I move that, something. So you're making a formal motion. And then if somebody is so inclined, they can then, if they agree with that, they can second that motion. So they can say second, or I second the motion. Before a vote is taken on a motion, someone may amend it. Somebody may say, hey, I agree with that conceptually, but, I would like to make an amendment, and I would like to, maybe strike out or insert these words or provide, this clarification, or just, wordsmith it to where it just flows a little bit more easily and clearly. So you can make amendments to that. And then before the formal motion is voted upon. The presiding officer is the convention chair, right? So this is going to be the person who facilitates the meeting, remaining impartial. So they're going to be introducing the proper order. They're going to recognize the speakers, right? So if somebody is making a motion, that's being noted. A convention secretary is going to note who's making the motion, who seconds the motion, who is amending the motion. But basically that convention chair is going to be who's maintaining the order and making sure that everything kind of stays germane. And then really puts the motion to a vote and announces the results. So again, let's be kind to each other, help out your neighbor. But again, newbies, for those of you who may feel a little bit intimidated by Robert's Rules, I don't want you to be intimidated. But if you want to just, kind of download this user-friendly table, and you can print that out and just bring it with you. And I'll actually kind of show you what it looks like here. Let me make this a little bigger for you guys.
And while you're making that bigger, one little comment. Carol's totally right that whenever you are recognized by the chair, to speak, identify yourself. Give your name and your county.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point, Carol. Yeah. Yeah. Whenever you do want to speak, you always want to make sure that it's very clear so that the convention secretary can capture everything in the minutes. So Jesse Cowart, Montgomery County, I'm making a motion for this. I move to this, or I move that, what have you. So this user-friendly table, print it out, bring it with you, but don't be intimidated by it. And, don't be afraid to ask somebody, say, hey, I have this question, or how do I do this? Reach out to someone and they'll be more than happy to kind of tell you how you would go about that. All right. So that's Robert's Rules. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. You do have that table. Definitely take some time to look over, and feel free to print that out and bring it with you. I did, and I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but I did put some terms and definitions in the appendix of this presentation just for you to refer back to. For the most part, we've kind of gone over it in here, but just, what's a credentialed delegate, a credentialed alternate, the delegation leader, the open seats, the voter button. So there are some terms and definitions in here just for you to refer to as well. The voting area, alternate seating area, badges, etc. So there are some terms and definitions in here for you to refer to, but I won't make you listen to me read every single one of them. So let's go back to the questions and finish up with any questions that we have from the group.
Sure. There was one that I saw earlier from Steve Revitt asking if someone wants to present a resolution for the body to vote on, when and how is that done?
With that, I would think that's like in the other business section, it kind of towards the end, and unless it's specific to something that is part of the reports. But if it's just kind of a general like resolution, everything, I think that would be appropriate in the other business section.
Yeah, from my experience, there's 2 times where I've seen resolutions come up. One is just at the end if time allows, but second is if we're in like we haven't gone to recess, but we're just kind of waiting. We're almost standing at ease. For example, maybe if a vote is being counted, perhaps during that time we're still in business, but we're just waiting for votes to be counted, something like that. And that's a time when people will start making motions for resolutions and things like that. So it depends on how the flow goes, what voting methods we use, all that type of stuff. But those are the 2 times I've seen resolutions considered.
Gotcha. All right. Questions around breakfast, parking, etc. I'm going to redirect you guys to events at lptexas.org. Let's see. Good. What else? Any other questions out there?
Actually, I think I don't know if you guys caught any. I think that we've stayed on top of most of them. There's a question about like which version of Robert's Rules that we're using. We just always are referring to the latest edition. I doubt there's going to be much difference to that, but if it comes down to that, whatever the latest edition is, which I think now is the 12th edition, is what we'll look up and figure things out by.
And we had another question. I think Agatha may have been asking, but where are you going to be placing these slides so that people can access them?
Yeah, so these slides are going to be posted. I'll show you exactly where. So if we go to, and I'll start from our LP Texas homepage, it'll be under 2022 conventions, training and forms. And then it's not there yet, Agatha, but it's going to be right in here. It'll be posted here within the next day. But then again, the recording of this training will be available on our YouTube channel as well.
Yep.
But we'll have these slides posted out here soon, tomorrow.
Sounds good. Billy Pierce asked if there will be a microphone line for people to be recognized for speaking. I anticipate that there will be.
I think
it does very much depend on how the events department has coordinated to set things up. But I expect there will be, and that it will be required to go to that microphone and stand in line if need be in order to be recognized.
I would expect there to be multiple microphone stands. I mean, we're talking about 300 delegates here, so typically, even in Big Spring, the last one where we had roughly half, we still had 2 different microphone stand stations set up.
Yeah, so it just depends on what has been organized, but yes, usually there's a microphone line. And then there was another question about if the counties are supposed to sit together. Are the counties supposed to sit together, but as far as where in the room, is it first come, first seated? I suspect, though I don't know for sure, I suspect that the seats may already be designated by the events department. That's a good question, not one that I know, but we know how many people we are expecting from each county, so it's possible that seating will be assigned prior to people arriving.
Yeah. But it's not being handled by the credentials committee.
Right. That's
we can't speak to that.
Yep. Great.
Other questions? There's been a lot of really good questions, guys.
Wes Benedict asked if that Robert's Rules cheat sheet that you showed will be posted somewhere. I think you said it's linked within the slides itself that we'll be posting where you just showed, correct?
It's linked in the slides. Yes.
Yeah.
In the slides. So, but if he's asking if it's posted somewhere other than within the slides, I'm not sure I know where that lives.
Yeah. It lives at that link that's in there that we could share it somewhere else if we want to, but yeah, that's probably gonna be the easiest place to find it.
Gotcha. All right. Well, then, if there are no other questions, guys, that's within the Credentials Committee purview anyway, we'll go ahead and adjourn for the evening. I do encourage you, for those of you who had really more event-specific questions about tickets or accommodations or anything like that, to please submit those questions to events@lptexas.org. But if you do have any questions on kind of the credentialing or the process within the business meeting and everything, please feel free to reach out to us on the Credentials Committee for those things. All right.
Awesome.
All right. I don't think I see any other questions coming in. Thank you guys for joining, and we'll get this presentation posted out under training as soon as possible. And that YouTube recording should be available here within the next day as well.
Great. Thanks so much for hosting, Jesse.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse.